The first light of dawn stretched over the horizon, painting the vast plains with streaks of gold and shadow. Malachi Trent, the rancher, stood by the corral, squinting at the rising sun. His land was his sanctuary, each fence post and ridge of dirt a testament to years of toil and persistence. Out here, in the open, every sound carried. The distant call of a hawk, the low snort of horses, even the whisper of wind through the dry grass, it all told stories. And today, a story was approaching, one he never expected. A woman stumbled over the ridge, her thin coat tattered and eyes hollow with exhaustion. She moved like someone who had been running for weeks, maybe months. Malachi felt an instinctive tug in his chest, a mix of curiosity and concern. Out here, strangers were rare, and most of them came with trouble. But this one, there was no fire in her hands, no weapon drawn, just a haunted look and a whisper of desperation. "Hey," he called, his voice steady but firm, the way he used when addressing his horses. "You lost?" The woman froze, her head jerking toward him. For a moment, fear eclipsed all else in her expression. She took a hesitant step forward, and then another, her bare hands gripping the edges of her coat like it was a shield. I need food," she said, her voice shaking. "Please, just food." Malachi hesitated. Most people would turn a stranger away, especially a woman alone with no one to vouch for her. Out here, trust was earned slowly, if at all. Yet something in her eyes, the raw, unfiltered hunger, the exhaustion of a life constantly on the run, pushed him toward action. He nodded slowly. "All right, follow me, don't wander off." She followed, shuffling over the dry earth with silent gratitude. Malachi guided her to the kitchen porch, where the smell of fresh coffee and baked bread lingered from the morning chores. He motioned toward the table. "Sit, you're safe here, for now." The woman sank into the wooden chair like she had been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her hands trembled as she accepted the bowl of stew Malachi set before her. Each bite she took was careful, almost reverent, as though she feared the meal might vanish if she dared to enjoy it too fully. "What's your name?" he asked cautiously. "Lena," she whispered, barely lifting her gaze. "Lena," he repeated, testing the name on his tongue. "You alone?" A shudder ran through her body. I don't have anywhere else. I was with people before, but..." She trailed off, her eyes clouding over with memories she couldn't or wouldn't speak aloud. Malachi nodded, understanding more than she realized. "Out here, it's quiet, but it's honest. You won't be harmed on this land while you're under my roof. That's a promise." Her lips quivered, and she lowered her gaze to her empty hands. "I've been running for so long. I don't know how to stop anymore." Malachi leaned back in his chair, watching the plains stretch endlessly beyond the fence. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying with it the scent of sage and dirt and the faint tang of distant rain. He could feel the unspoken dangers lurking beyond the horizon, the men who hunted, the law that turned blind, the grudges that festered in secret. And yet, in that moment, he made a decision. He would protect her, at least for now. "You can stay," he said simply. "As long as you follow the rules of this land, no wandering off, no trouble." She nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Thank you," she murmured. I've never met anyone like you." Malachi gave a small, humorless smile. "You'll find out most people aren't worth trusting. But maybe, just maybe, I am. That's your choice to believe." Days passed, and Lena began to settle into the rhythms of the ranch. Malachi noticed small habits, the way she avoided eye contact when others passed, how she flinched at sudden noises, how she handled herself with an almost feral caution. It became clear she had known hardship in ways the plains themselves could never teach. And yet, there was a strength buried beneath the exhaustion, a flicker of something untamable, waiting for the right moment to ignite. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Malachi watched her quietly stacking hay in the barn. He had expected gratitude, maybe timid respect, but what he saw instead was resilience. She moved with care, but also with purpose, like every motion was calculated to survive. "You're stronger than you realize," he said, his voice carrying softly across the barn. She froze, glancing over her shoulder. I don't feel strong. Strength isn't always loud, he said. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just surviving one more day when everyone else would have given up. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. I used to think giving up was easier. And now? He asked. No, I don't know. Maybe there's a reason I'm still here. Malachi's gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the shadows of distant mountains stretched like dark fingers across the land. Somewhere out there, her past was still hunting her, moving closer with every passing hour. But for tonight, the ranch was theirs. She was safe, if only for a little while. Later, as they shared a meager supper on the porch, the wind carried a distant, eerie whistle across the plains. Malachi's hand instinctively brushed against the grip of his revolver, a habit that never left him. He had learned long ago that danger often arrived quietly, in the form of men who assumed kindness was weakness. Lena, sensing the tension, stayed close. Are they coming? She asked softly, a tremor betraying her calm facade. They could be, he admitted. But if they are, they'll learn the hard way that this land isn't easy to take. The night deepened, and the stars emerged one by one, scattered like sparks over the dark canvas of the sky. Malachi kept watch, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. Protecting her was no longer a simple act of charity. It was a challenge, one that could cost him everything if he failed. In the distance, the sound of horses echoed faintly across the plains, just enough to make him stiffen. But when he squinted, nothing appeared, only the shadows of the hills and the whispering wind. Still, a sense of being watched lingered, a feeling that the quiet desert held its secrets and that someone, somewhere, knew she was here. Lena's fingers brushed against his arm instinctively, a silent plea for reassurance. Will they find me? Malachi looked at her, the first real softness in his eyes since she'd arrived. Not while I'm here, he said. Not while you're on my land. And in that moment, as the stars wheeled overhead and the night settled like a blanket over the plains, both of them understood something unspoken. This was no longer just a temporary refuge. It was the beginning of a bond forged in survival and trust, one that would soon draw the attention of forces neither of them could ignore. The wind shifted again, carrying with it a faint scent, unfamiliar and ancient. Malachi's instincts pricked. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Lena's past and her people were stirring. Something was coming, but for now, the ranch was theirs, and he would not let anyone take it from them. The morning sun rose over the ranch with a brilliance that seemed almost defiant, as if announcing that the day would belong to those who dared to claim it. Malachi moved through the corral, checking on his horses and cattle, the rhythm of his work grounding him in the present. Lena followed quietly, her movements more assured than the previous day. She had eaten well, slept deeply, and for the first time in months, felt a fragile sense of security. Yet peace on the plains was always fleeting. By mid-morning, a cloud of dust appeared on the horizon. Horses, moving swiftly, their riders silhouetted by the sun, brought tension creeping back into the air. Malachi's hand rested instinctively on the revolver at his hip. Lena froze, her eyes wide, scanning the horizon with the same sharp alertness that had defined her survival instincts for months. They're coming, Malachi said quietly, his voice low, almost a warning carried only to her ears. They? Lena asked, her tone sharp but quiet. People who think they can take what's not theirs, sometimes men, sometimes worse. The riders slowed as they neared the ranch, and Malachi could see the unusual markings on their saddles. They weren't standard lawmen, nor typical bounty hunters. Something about their formation and discipline suggested a more organized, strategic presence, people accustomed to respect and obedience, not negotiation. He motioned Lena toward the barn. Stay inside. Don't make a sound. The riders dismounted, moving with the precision of men who knew how to enter territory silently and efficiently. They stopped at the edge of the property, surveying the land like hunters studying prey. Malachi stepped from the barn, hands raised not in surrender but in measured confidence. "State your business," he called, his voice carrying easily across the open ground. The tallest rider, a man with sharp features and cold eyes, stepped forward. "We're here for the woman," he said. "Hand her over, and no one gets hurt." Malachi's eyes narrowed. "This land isn't yours. She isn't yours. Leave, and you'll leave whole. Push further, and you'll wish you hadn't." A smirk flickered across the man's face. Bold words for a lone rancher. Before tension could escalate further, a sound came from the hills, a soft, rhythmic thudding that grew steadily louder. Malachi squinted toward the distant rise. Then he saw them, a group moving like shadows across the ridge. At first, it looked like a dust cloud, but soon he recognized the figures. Men and women, mounted on horses, their movements deliberate, silent, controlled, and then he noticed the markings, the symbols etched on their clothing, the distinct patterns of their culture. Lena's eyes widened, recognition flashing across her features. "They're coming for me," she whispered. "They?" Malachi prompted, stepping closer, protective. "My people," she said, voice trembling but resolute. They've come to make sure I'm safe." The group descended onto the ranch with the grace of predators moving through the grass, but their presence radiated authority rather than malice. They dismounted, surrounding the intruders in a precise semicircle. Malachi felt the tension in the air shift subtly. The threat that had seemed imminent now felt contained, restrained by the presence of these unexpected allies. One of the riders, an elder woman with hair like silver threads catching the sunlight, stepped forward. Her eyes were calm, yet they held the weight of generations. She regarded the intruders with a quiet intensity that seemed to strip the arrogance from their stance. "Step back," she said, voice steady. "You have no claim here." The intruders hesitated, instinctively measuring the power emanating from the newcomers. Malachi felt Lena press closer to him, sensing both fear and relief. The elder woman spoke again, addressing Lena directly. "Child, your journey has been long and perilous. You are safe now." Lena swallowed hard, emotions flooding her in a way that left her momentarily speechless. For the first time in months, she felt the relief of being recognized and protected, not just as a fugitive, but as a member of a community that claimed her by right. Malachi watched, intrigued and cautious. These were not random travelers. They were organized, disciplined, and bound by loyalty that went beyond simple law or custom. He could sense the tension among the intruders, the subtle hesitation in their movements. They understood instinctively that force would meet equal force, perhaps even more than that. "Leave now," the elder woman commanded, and her tone left no room for argument. The intruders exchanged glances, weighing the risk. The presence of these riders, skilled and unwavering, tipped the balance. Slowly, they began to retreat, their authority challenged by a force they had not anticipated. Malachi's respect for Lena's protectors grew with each step they took away from the ranch. Once the dust settled and the intruders vanished beyond the horizon, Lena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. They'll protect me?" "They will," Malachi said, voice calm but firm. "And as long as you're here, on this land, no one will take you without a fight." The elder woman nodded toward Lena. "Your bond with this man, this ranch, it is strong. But remember, strength comes not from solitude, but from trust and alliances." Lena met Malachi's gaze, understanding in her eyes. He nodded back. "You're safe here. For now, we face whatever comes together." That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Malachi and Lena stood on the porch, watching the newcomers settle around the perimeter of the property. Fires flickered in the distance, signaling watch posts in readiness. Lena's expression softened, a tentative smile breaking through the weariness. Malachi spoke, voice quiet but deliberate. "They came because you belong to more than yourself, and because they respect what you found here." Lena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I've never had anyone care like this, like you and them." "You will," he said simply. "Out here, care and survival go hand in hand. You'll learn that quickly." The wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the distant echo of hooves and voices. It was a reminder that the world beyond the ranch was still watching, still waiting. Yet in that moment, surrounded by allies and with the plains stretching endlessly before them, Malachi and Lena found a measure of peace. They had survived the first test, but the larger challenges were only beginning to reveal themselves. Night fell, and the stars emerged, brilliant and innumerable. Malachi stayed on watch, revolver close, eyes scanning the horizon. Lena slept nearby, finally unburdened enough to rest. And beyond the hills, he knew, unseen eyes marked every movement, measuring, waiting. The story of her survival was far from over, but tonight, at least, the ranch was theirs. Dawn broke over the ranch like a promise, soft pink and gold spilling across the plains. Malachi rode out early, checking fences and water troughs, keeping a sharp eye on the horizon. Something about the night had unsettled him, though the immediate threat had vanished. He felt the presence of unseen eyes still watching, still plotting. Lena moved beside him, quieter than usual, her thoughts distant, her fingers brushing the reins nervously. "They're not far," she said finally, voice low, almost reluctant. "Even if they don't approach today, they're planning. You can feel it." "I feel it," Malachi replied. "And we'll be ready." By mid-morning, the sound of horses thundered from the east. Malachi's pulse quickened, but he didn't panic. This time, the riders weren't cautious, they charged. Aggressive, unrelenting. He recognized some of the intruders from the previous day, now reinforced by others. Their numbers swelled with those who had underestimated the ranch. Malachi drew his revolver, but Lena stepped in front of him, eyes blazing. "Let me," she said. Her tribe, already spread strategically around the ranch, rose from hiding, blending into the terrain as if the earth itself had birthed warriors. Their arrival was silent, swift, and precise. The intruders slowed, realizing they were now surrounded. Malachi's heart pounded, not from fear, but from awe. These people, protective and loyal, moved with a unity that made the assailants hesitate. Malachi caught sight of the elder woman, their leaders signaling with subtle gestures. Each action a command that was obeyed without question. "You cannot take her," the elder woman called out. "Turn back, or face consequences you cannot imagine." A tense silence hung over the ranch, broken only by the snort of horses and the shuffle of boots against dust. The intruders measured, recalculated, and then, with a roar of frustration, began their advance. But each step forward was met with the unyielding presence of Lena's tribe. Arrows nocked, eyes fixed, rifles ready, every angle covered, every approach anticipated. Malachi moved beside Lena, revolver steady. "We've got this," he said quietly, though his voice carried the weight of certainty rather than hope. Lena nodded, gripping her weapon tighter, the fire in her eyes reflecting the resolve he had come to admire. The clash was swift and precise. The intruders, despite their initial aggression, found themselves outmaneuvered, trapped between Malachi's quick tactics and the disciplined coordination of Lena's people. Shots rang out, but none fell where they were not meant. The intruders' confidence fractured, panic replacing bravado. Amid the chaos, Lena moved like a shadow, protecting those who were most vulnerable while striking with calculated precision. Malachi watched, realizing fully that this woman, this survivor, was no longer the frightened fugitive he had first encountered. She was a force, a leader, a protector. Every strike she made, every command she issued, reminded him why he had risked everything to stand by her. By midday, the dust had settled. The intruders were disarmed, scattered, humiliated, and the ranch remained untouched. Malachi exhaled slowly, the weight of relief pressing down on him. He looked to Lena, whose chest rose and fell steadily, eyes fierce and unyielding. "They'll think twice now," he said, voice low but resolute. "No one will dare touch this land or you again." "They won't," she replied, a smile breaking through exhaustion. "Not while we stand together." The elder woman approached, her eyes softening as they met Lena's. "You are safe," she said simply. And this land is protected not by fear, but by loyalty, by courage, by the bonds you forge with those who respect your right to exist freely. Malachi felt a surge of gratitude for these people he had come to respect, this unspoken alliance that had saved them all. He turned to Lena, who met his gaze steadily. "You've done more than survive," he said. "You've reclaimed your life." "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, voice steady despite the lingering tremor of adrenaline. "You stood when no one else would. You protected me, even when it was dangerous, even when it was inconvenient." Malachi shrugged, but there was pride in his eyes. "I didn't do it alone. You fought too, in ways I could only follow." The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows over the plains. Life on the ranch would continue, but now it carried a new meaning. It was no longer just a stretch of land, cattle, and fences. It was a symbol of survival, of courage, and of the bonds forged in the fires of adversity. Lena walked through the corral, her fingers brushing the wooden posts, feeling the solidity of the land beneath her hands. "It feels ours," she whispered, almost to herself. "It is," Malachi said, standing beside her. "Every inch of it. Every moment we've claimed together." They watched as the sun reached its zenith, the horizon stretching endlessly before them. The air was calm now. The tension of past threats dissipated, replaced by a quiet assurance that came from knowing they were no longer alone. Lena's tribe lingered nearby, visible but unobtrusive. Guardians who had pledged loyalty not to a man or a woman, but to the principle of justice, protection, and survival. Malachi felt the weight of everything that had led to this moment. The threats, the betrayals, the uncertainty. And now, it all seemed to crystallize into a single, undeniable truth. The ranch was theirs, Lena was safe, and the bonds of trust and courage had secured a future neither had dared imagine before. As the day faded into evening, Malachi and Lena stood together on the porch, watching the sun sink below the hills, painting the sky in strokes of crimson and gold. It was a quiet, perfect moment, hard-earned, fragile, and yet unbreakable. "Tomorrow," Lena said softly, "we start anew." "Tomorrow," Malachi agreed, knowing that no matter what challenges came, they would face them as they had always faced the worst. Side by side, unyielding, unafraid. The night arrived, stars glittering with silent promise. The ranch was peaceful, the land protected, the alliance strong. And in that quiet, both Malachi and Lena understood that true strength was not in solitude, nor in mere survival, but in standing together, unwavering for what was right. This was more than a ranch. It was a sanctuary, a testament to courage, a declaration that those who dared to threaten the innocent would be met with unbreakable resolve. The plains stretched endlessly, free and wild, and the story of survival, loyalty, and courage would be remembered long after the dust had settled. If you love this story of courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the wild, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a tale of survival, bravery, and justice that proves even in the harshest lands, the right choices can protect what matters most.